He's shared in the video.
Sorry.
I think doctor's
Yes.
alarm line just been cut off just now
Yes.
because it suddenly stopped.
Yes. Sorry. Actually, are you listening to me, everyone?
Yes, we can hear
Yes, sir.
you.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
doctor.
Actually, the power is
Yes,
cut off
yes.
and
We can
no
see your
Wi-Fi
screen.
now. So I am using now my mobile as hotspot. I don't know how long I can continue. If sometimes power is been cut, this is scheduled load shedding in Bangladesh. So maximum 2 hours. Hopefully within 1 hour it will come back. If it is not come, you have to wait until uh, mm, until power comes. Okay, so don't worry, you will get the recordings as well if you are missing anything. So I can continue again. Okay. Okay, mute your mic, everyone, please. Are you watching my screen now? Is it okay?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay, okay,
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, it's okay.
okay, okay. It's okay. Okay, I was talking about the probability sampling technique and non-probability sampling technique. Uh, in probability sampling, our actually why we use the sampling technique, why we collect the samples instead of using the whole universe, collect from the whole universe, or from. Please mute your mic. Okay. So we collect the data from the yeah. We don't collect the data from the whole universe. Instead of that, we collect the samples from the whole universe. So this after doing the study from this sample, we want to generalize it to the whole context, to the whole universe. That's why our sampling technique should be randomly selected so that no bias is there. So we have to follow such a technique that the equal information is coming from the from our yeah, population. So that's why there should not be any bias in our collection of samples, because we have to generalize it. So our primary assumption, we are selecting the samples based on the probability sampling technique, and we have different technique for probability sampling. Suppose simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified cluster sampling. So however, in some cases what happened, it is very difficult to go for the probability sampling technique practically. Theoretically it is okay, but when we go for the practically for data collection, it is very difficult to access to the organization, to access to the employees due to different reasons. Maybe some war, or a different organization, they restrict that we will not give you our information, or like this. So what we do then, and it is very difficult to contact with some organization or some employees, or some responders. Then what we do, we go for the convenient in non-probability sampling. So in that case, we use convenience sampling, judgmental sampling, quota sampling, snowball sampling. It is sometimes we need to collect the data through non-probability sampling technique. So but it has low acceptance than the probability sampling, because it is one kinds of bias. Our study biased result may comes, and from the assumption of this point of view, so we go for So we go for non-probability sampling technique. Sometimes different journals they don't accept if you are go for the non-probability sampling, and different supervisors, examiners, they don't accept it. They always because it has low generalizability ability. Okay, generalizable ability. That's why. I think it's okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Then. Okay. Sometimes we don't know how many items or indicators we should use for measuring a particular construct. It is very difficult. So different according to Higher, he recommend for 5 to 7 items for a optimum level for measuring optimum items for measuring a latent variable according to Higher. Sometimes I have seen some of my clients, they collect data for a particular variable. She use 35 items. So it is not desirable if you have the huge number of poor items. So we have some recommendations like what would be the Amos requirement of the sample size. According to Higher, it should be 5 to 7, and minimum we need the 3 indicators, minimum number 3, and it is better if it is in between 5 to 7. Too many items create model fit difficult according to Bentler, and according to Pazza suggests to use a small number of good items rather than a large number of poor items. Okay, that's why it is very important when you are taking your indicators or items for a construct. It is very important. So I would suggest if you are intended to do the same, then it is if your number of samples in between 5 to 7. Yes, yeah. Dr. Said Tanvir, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, here.
Sir, if I find that if there is 20 items in a scale, so in the confirmatory factor analysis, if some items are not that much powerful or not up to the mark or standard, can I drop those items during the ACM?
Yes. That we do in the first stage in confirmatory factor analysis. That we drop the items that is not fit for our model. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So,
Dear sir, may I suggest if the sir just continue the session, and if we ask the question after end of the session, then it may be helpful to continue the session smoothly, because sir has electricity issue after 1 hour or 2 hours. He may be.
it's okay, no problem. It is if it is not a very big question or confusable or anything, if short question is there, no problem, inshallah. So okay, thank you very much, brother, for your suggestion. Anybody? Okay. So
Doctor,
yes, please.
I want to ask about the instrument. You say we can adopt and adapt, right? So when we adapt, is it okay for us to mix the construct from a different author or literature? Or
Yes.
you suggest that when we create a variable, all the instrument must come from only one author or literature?
No,
Thank you.
actually, sister, when we select the variable, if your intention to justify or to test the theory, in that case you have to take the same variable based on the theory suggested factors. For the theory suggesting, you have to take the same variable, and you have to take the same instrument that is being used. Okay. Another thing, if you are not testing the theory, instead of that you are testing the hypothesis, and you are not post-positivism, you are under positivism study. In that case, you can take different variables from the literature. So it is not the one suggesting by the instrument the variables and developed by the by particular authors. So you have to select the variables based on your problem, and you have to select the variables from your theory as well as from the empirical evidence. So in that case, it is and based on that you develop the conceptual framework, and based on that conceptual framework and what the variables you have considered are influencing to the problem. So based on that you will based on that variables you will collect the items from from the existing literature. So it is not just from the questionnaire you are taking the variables and items. It is the one that you have to based on the problem and based on the factors from the factors which are most importantly important influencer or influencing your problem based on your existing literature and extensive literature review. You find those variables. So that variables you have considered that influence your problem. So you have to, based on that you have to collect you have to take the items from different authors. So from that ground, if your items are may come from different study, from different instrument or different questionnaires, you can take based on your requirement. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
Okay. Then one more thing, sister, if for a particular variable, if some items taking from one author and some items taking from another author, in that case it is mandatory to do the EFA before going for CFA, and you have to do it during your pilot study. Okay.
Yes, yes, understood.
And
Thank you.
if it is fully adopted items and taking from the same same author all the items and the items not from the different author, in that case it is optional, not mandatory. Okay.
Okay, okay.
Start your data analysis. Data input through SPSS, and actually Amos it can understand the data when your data under SPSS software. So in the case of Smart PLS, our data need to convert into CSV file, otherwise our Smart PLS cannot recognize it, cannot identify it. But in the case of Smart Amos, we need the SPSS data. Okay, those who has the Excel data, you have to convert it in SPSS data. Then check missing values. It's very important. If in your data set, if you have the missing values, then your program, your model will not run. So it's very important in the beginning you do not have any missing values in your data set. Then data reliability and Cronbach alpha. If you have your data reliability is very low, then it is very difficult to get the model fit. So at least it needs 0.7 the Cronbach alpha, or more, and it is better if you have your Cronbach alpha value is 0.8 is better. Then Amos is a program to assist with SAM, part of SPSS. Actually, it is the one of the part of SPSS. Then structural equation modeling, also known as analysis of covariance structure and causal modeling. So these are the assumptions for the Amos. Appropriate sample size, as I told you, it is suggested to have your sample size is large sample size, that is more 200 or more. Then a linear relationship and no multicollinearity. Your data should be interval data, that is called the Likert scale data, and theoretically identified variables, and there is no outliers in your data set, and normally distribution of variables. Your data is normally distributed, so that need to know, and these requirements need to fulfill for using the Amos. So for we have two kinds of data normality: univariate outlier, univariate data normality and multivariate data normality. Univariate data normality can be calculated through the Kolmogorov and Shapiro test and skewness and kurtosis, and there are some requirement for the data normality for Kolmogorov and Shapiro, and skewness and kurtosis plus minus 2 according to according to Palanth, I think plus minus 7 also accepted. And for for kurtosis. And for Mardia test, actually one of the assumption is your data is univariate multivariate normal for using the Amos. If it is not, then you can go for the smart PLS. So how to do the Mardia test? Latent variables with compute variables in values in Excel. If the p value is less than 0.55, data is not multivariate normal. If it is above that, then your data is normal. Then univariate data we have two kinds of outliers. Your data set must be free from the outliers. It influences our study, and it is the cause for our data normal the issues for the data normality. So that's why our data should be free from the outliers, and we know there are two kinds of outliers. One is univariate outliers and another is multivariate outliers. Z score, okay. In univariate outliers, we have the threshold value, that is your if your observations is above the plus minus 3.29 in the case of Z score, then we have the outliers. We have to delete those observations. Okay, in the case of multivariate outliers, we need to delete through the multivariate outliers, and that can be calculated through the Mahalanobis distance. So in the case of Amos, we get the same Mahalanobis distance d square value from the Amos automatically in the measurement level. So we have to delete those observations who are under multivariate outliers. So okay, introduction to structural equation modeling. Amos requirement 1, that is sample size, and sample size, as I told you, it is called smart PLS can handle if it is less than 100, and median sample size is 100 to 200, and more than 200 is the large. We need the more large sample size, and critical sample size is 200 according to the Ho 2008. Then some other recommendations we have according to Ho. He told that if our suppose if our number of indicators is suppose 100, then our sample size would be 1000. It should be 1:10. but according to Bandler and Choha, they suggested that 1:5. If your indicators, number of indicators is 100, then your sample size would be 500. So different recommendations, but whatever you are using, you have to give the justification on which basis you have determined your sample size. And requirement 2, your minimum indicators better to have 3, and 5 to 7 is better items for to represent a construct, and too many items create the model fit difficult. One of the assumption, one of the requirement in Amos is model fit. Your data should comply the fitting requirements. So if you have the too many items, 10, 12, 15, 16, 20, 30, 40, if your items like this, then it will create the model very difficult. And you cannot delete the items more than 20%. That's why it is better when you are choosing the items, choose the most appropriate and good items. And according to Pager, suggests to use a small number of good items rather than a large number of poor items. Sorry. And you can use the item parcelling in a structural model. Sometimes if you have the higher order construct, in that case the lower order construct, you can use the mean value of the items, and you can use that latent variable or the subconstruct or the dimension as your item. So you can use the it is optional, not always highly required, but you can use the item parcelling. Then what is the concept of item parcelling? Like the dimension of A, dimension of B, dimension of C, and this is the higher order construct. A has 5 items, B has 5 items, and C has 5 items, and you are calculating the mean value of all the items of A. Then you are using the A as a latent variable, not using the items. You are using the mean value of all the items, and in that case you can use this dimension as your item by calculating the mean value of each items of the dimensions, and you can use this higher order construct as your construct, main construct. You can use this instead of using the this whole ABC and dimensions with items. You can use, instead of that, you can use this as dimensions with single items like this, and it is called item parcelling operation. So sometimes it might be required. What is the usability of the Amos? Amos has the following applications. You can calculate here construct validity, construct reliability, overall model fit, individual paths coefficient, mediation effect, and you can do the moderation effect and multi-group analysis. So these are the analysis that you can use you can calculate through the Amos. So Amos nomenclature. So you have to be aware about the nomenclature, or what the different terms we used in the software. So if it is oval shaped, it is that oval shaped we use that latent variable. This is also called unobserved variable. And when it is rectangular, then we say it is called observed variables, and residuals also oval shaped, and correlation value 2 arrow and bidirectional, then it is called the correlation or covariance, and causal path with single arrow line. Okay. And Amos has 3 levels in confirmatory factor analysis. The first level, second level measurement model, third level is structural model. So in the confirmatory factor analysis is used for testing each construct. Suppose we need to do the study here is our items and the variable here it is meeting the model fit and it is complying the model fit requirements, and the convergent validity means all the items are converging towards its own construct, and the construct reliability, we have to calculate the construct reliability. We have the requirement like construct validity should be at least 0.7 and convergent validity should be 0.5 AVE, average variance extracted. So this is the requirement that we shall do. And measurement model shows and path diagram of all the endogenous and exogenous variable. We put in one path diagram we create, and where we observe the model fit, discriminant validity, normality assumption, and presence of outliers. In the measurement model stage, we look at this requirement: model fit, discriminant validity, normality assumptions, and presence of outliers. And in the third stage, structural model we create, and that shows a linkage between construct for hypothesis. What is the we make the relationship between IV dV, IV mediator dV, like this. See the okay, test for model fit. Here we test model fit, our model fit requirement should be fulfilled. Then test for hypothesis or individual path or regression weights. Then describe coefficient of determination, that is called R square value. That is the requirement for the structural model. So another, according to Robert Ho, three requirements very essential. One is sample size, number of indicators, and item per selling. So these are the graphical graphics that we will use in our software. That is manifest variable, that is rectangular, latent variable oval shaped, and this is called indicator icon. And a path, this is path. I shall tell you when we will open the Amos software. The first step is confirmatory factor analysis. In our practice, the first stage we will create the